egotistical, so unpredictable, here on the SNL Network.
Yes, that is right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another very special episode of the SNL Network. My name is Jon Schneider, host of the SNL Network, and I'm so thrilled to be here tonight for a very special episode. This is an episode of the podcast that I've wanted to do pretty much since I started this thing because, I don't get to talk about this a lot, but really that, my second screen, whenever I watched Saturday Night Live growing up was, I would go over to different websites and I would read recaps of the show. And I always wanted to talk to those people and ask them questions. And that's really what we're going to do here tonight. So we have two very special guests. Before we get to them, I do want to do a quick plug for the shows that we have done since our last SNL run. A couple of weeks back, we had a great By the Number show with Mike Murray, and he was there to give the power rankings for the latest power rankings for everybody on Saturday Night Live. We went over some great statistics. So check out that show with Darren Patterson from SNL Nerds and Nicole Rovine. We also had a very fun Valentine's Day themed superfan takeover last week. So if you're ever thinking about, what are the favorite love sketches in the history of the show? Yeah, we had some fun ones. So so those were some fun ones with the superfans. They were there taking over last week. And tonight we are live with, like I said, two very special guests. You may know them from recapping Saturday Night Live every single week at different publications. And it is my honor to have them on the show to go over, different aspects of what they do. So first, introducing Dennis Perkins, current recapper for the AV Club. Dennis, how are you?
I'm well, John. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Dennis, we had you on the show all the way back when Issa Rae hosted in season 46. So it's been a long time. Can you catch the listeners up on what you've been up to?
Plugging away at the AV Club, reviewing things they let me review, and writing little, whatever they'll pay me to write. Really, just having a freelancers pandemic, in the sense that my wife and I both are freelance writers. We write from home, so we were kind of set up to be hermits and isolated for the last couple of years. So, just that, yeah.
For sure. Well, I can't wait to get into, everything that you've been doing and all the stuff that you've been writing about Saturday Night Live. Joining us, you've heard him many times on the podcast. It is the great Andy Hoagland from Entertainment Weekly and SNL in Review. Andy, how are you?
I'm doing well, John. Thanks for having me back on again. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and it's great to talk on this episode with Dennis Perkins, Mr. Dennis Perkins. He's like the Chevy Chase equivalent to my Kevin Nealon or my Colin Quinn. So it's really an honor to be part of this. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is really fun.
I don't want to be.
You don't want to be Chevy. You can be Dennis Miller. Is that better or worse?
Dennis,
No,
who do you want to be?
Oh man.
Or you can be Norm. Whatever you want. You can be Tina. Whatever. I'm just trying to thread the narrative.
I'll be Chevy. It's fine. I'm old.
Okay.
So.
All right. Gentlemen, it's really great to have you. We're going to talk, through, I have a bunch of questions, and I want this to be an open conversation about what it is like to be a journalist, recapping Saturday Night Live. We are live in the chat on YouTube. So if you have questions for either Dennis or Andy throughout the conversation, put them in the chat. I'll make sure to start with them. But, Dennis, let me start with you because, I've talked to many podcasters, right? So I know what it's like to, go on the microphone and, recap the show, whether it's our hot take show or roundtables, and, talk with all different types of people. But how did you get into writing and recapping? Where did you start with that process?
Oh, God. I started working at the AV Club in 2012. I got hired as a freelancer, which I still am. And before that, I had a movie. I also write for the Portland, Maine Press Herald, and I had a column there.
Yeah.
I still do, about independent film in Maine, and I just started submitting packets. And before that, I had written for free my entire life, online, and just various notebooks. But before that, I started a newsletter for a video store, an independent video store in Portland that I worked in forever and ever, where it became a way to exercise my brain. And that kind of got me noticed by somebody who worked at the Press Herald, Justin Ellis. He's a wonderful writer who works at Defector now. hooked me up at the Press Herald, and I just submitted, and Emily Vanderwerf and Eric Adams gave me, and Sonia Soraya gave me a look and gave me a chance, and I started
Mayor
reviewing.
Eric Adams?
Absolutely. What's that? No, not Mayor Eric Adams.
Yeah.
Hurricane Smith reference. I like that. We're going all the way back.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
did you work at Bull Moose, by the way, Dennis?
I didn't. I worked across the hall from the Portland Bull Moose at a place called Videoport.
Got it.
Video store, yeah. But anyway, I started reviewing. My first review was for Russell Brand's short-lived talk show, as I recall, back in 2012. And I would review literally anything they threw at me. I pitched for everything. I remember I reviewed a reality TV show called, oh my God, it was about guys who catch giant rats in the swamps in Louisiana. God. Yeah. So they were doing a lot more reviews back in the day. But sort of that. And then I gradually, David Sims was reviewing SNL for them weekly. And he left in 2014, and they asked for submissions, and I swallowed real hard, and I pitched, and they gave it to me.
Cool. And you had been a big fan of Saturday Night Live prior to this, obviously.
Yeah, I'm 53 years old, so I was about 6 when it came on the air, and I can't imagine my parents let me stay up that late, but they must have, because I remember everything revolving around. I was obsessed with it from a very young age, and remember the story I always tell is that I was at a cocktail party my parents were throwing at home, and SNL came on because it was a Saturday, and I told two of my parents' friends they had to watch it because it was really good. And there was a sketch with Garrett Morris called Bad Clams. I don't know if anyone remembers Bad Clams, but it wasn't a great sketch, and they just kind of looked at this little kid funny, I remember. And I remember saying a phrase that I've repeated to people many times over the years, which is, it's usually better than that.
Yeah, that's a great byline for an article, or a great like a headline for an article. It's usually better than that. But yeah, so that's really interesting. And Andy, I mean, we have spoken to you many times, but I don't know if you've ever actually told the story on the podcast about how you got into recapping Saturday Night Live.
Well, just to really date myself a little bit, the first time I ever reviewed anything was when I was in high school. Movie Man's Guide to the Movies, 2003, Whale Rider. So that was, just a kind of like Dennis a little bit, just started out as a hobby, did that for a number of years. I actually studied film at Boston University. I remember taking a film criticism class, and that was much more on the side of criticism and writing, not so much on the trade end. So I loved writing term papers about Altman and Arbison and guys like that. But the SNL piece really came into play. Dennis, I don't know if you remember a number of years ago, Boston Globe or Boston.com had something called BDC Wire that they were powering. Wow. And, it spotlighted a lot of, the music scene in Boston, and much more like pop culture focused to kind of capture, a more youthful audience. And I pitched them a column called SNL in Review, hence the brand. And it was essentially a monthly piece where I would talk about, a movie anniversary, if it was the 25th anniversary of, or 35th anniversary of Blues Brothers, that would be the hook for the month, or Happy Gilmore, or whatever, Billy Madison. So I did that for a while, and kind of established the brand. And, as I went along, I started interviewing show alumni as well, too, as John knows. I've interviewed Ellen Cleghorn for Slate. I've interviewed Jay Moore and Jim Brewer for Daily Beast. I contribute to the Vulture chat room segment. I just had something on Paul Schaefer. So that kind of like Q&A profiling was my bread and butter on the freelance side for a while. And then Jillian, who's the digital director for Entertainment Weekly, she'd reached out and asked if I wanted to get into the recap game, and here I am. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
For sure. And I think that what's really cool is that I always get to hear from our listeners, a lot of them who have like blogs of their own, and they just want to talk about the show. and they just want to rank it or evaluate it. And we always talk about, SNL is so subjective in terms of what's funny and what's not, and how do you, look at it from an objective lens. But I always find it fascinating that basically, you're given this opportunity, for example, you, Dennis, who was then chosen to recap for the AV Club Saturday Night Live. And does the AV Club say to you, hey, you can do this in any format you want because there's a million different ways to look at SNL? Or were you told like, hey, this is the way I want you to evaluate the show?
I mean, any site has certain standards and a certain voice that you have to learn, kind of adapt your style to the in-house style. But I really was given free rein to do it as I saw fit, and it's evolved over the years. It's gotten longer. I usually end up. The great thing about doing it at the AV Club is that I always joke, and I hope it's a joke, that they only gave it to me because no editors wanted to stay up overnight on Sunday morning. So I was kind of given the keys, and I got to write whatever I wanted, proof it, edit it, and then put it up on my own. And since nobody stopped me, I just kept expanding and expanding. And I usually end up writing now around 3,000 or 4,000 words. And nobody stopped me, which is good. they've made adjustments. They've asked me to kind of, and I kind of came up with a different format that helped it not just become sort of sketch review. It can get pretty tiresome. So if you can group them in a different way, categorize them, and have different kind of themes within the same review, I found that that's been helpful.
Mm-hmm. And Andy, what about you? Was there like, when Jillian said to you, hey, we want you to go ahead and do these reviews, did you think I wanted to do it in this particular format?
Well, so, I don't have the luxury of being particularly thoughtful about this stuff. I'm writing these, extemporaneous, like as the show is going on. So, I kind of view, my approach to recapping is it's almost like a sporting event. Like as the cold open is going on, I am digesting it, attempting to be analytical, and somewhat similar to Dennis, whatever comes out goes on the page, gets published practically. And hopefully my grammar is being corrected and so forth. But there's a certain amount of freedom, which is great. You can kind of shoot from the hip. I'd say that, I owe so much to, reading Dennis over the years. Alan Sepinwall is an obvious influence, kind of really sort of nailed the game. So I take a lot of influence there. My one contribution is, again, going back to the sporting metaphor, is I attempt to incorporate feedback from former cast members. Kind of like if you're watching, the World Series, you'll have, Dennis Eckersley or Bob Uecker or whatever. I use Dennis Eckersley because of the Boston connection, Dennis, but or RIP Jerry Remy. But so that's kind of my twist on it, is I want to be able to have feedback. So if there's a host who's hosted before, and Jeff Richards, was on during their first appearance, get Jeff's thoughts and filter those in. When Kieran Culkin hosted a couple weeks ago, I talked to Siobhan Fallon Hogan about her thoughts working with him in like the Rich Meister sketch, or being next to him when Kevin Nealon hoisted him up on his shoulders when he's 6 years old. Being able to capture those memories and filter those in. Or I'll have cast members emailing me their thoughts or texting me their thoughts as the show's going on as well too. So those just live will be filtered in. It's like I got my chef's hat on. I'm just adding different ingredients as we go along a little bit. Oh, what's up, Nick Store? How you doing, man? I'm just looking at the chat. So
yeah, no problem. I think that what was interesting for me in reading both your reviews, and I do my best, even though I am also recapping the show, to read both of your reviews, is that I do find that the tone of the reviews that the two of you have is very different. Andy, when you take the approach of bringing in alumni to talk about the show, there's definitely a step back that you take, probably, in my assumption, from saying this sketch was good or this sketch was bad, because you're gonna, you want to give the person you're asking to come in to talk about the show, their ability to have that voice. Whereas I find that Dennis probably digs a little bit deeper into his evaluation of certain sketches. So
yeah, I wish I had that. Like I said, I wish I had that luxury, but I'm literally typing these up as I go along. So being able to plan as much as I can, gives me that chance to have, sort of that layer of context. But otherwise, it's, where you're buckling up and you're flying steam ahead,
Yeah, but is that something you don't like? Is that something you wish you could change? Andy?
Yeah, I mean, the name of the game is getting the review up as quickly as possible. So people, if they're looking for it, they're able to see the review, and it's popping up in the algorithm and SEO and whatnot. So to me, again, it's just a different approach. I see it. It's a little bit of a challenge, but at the same time, I was just listening to Drew McWeeny the other day, and he was talking about how his approach to this stuff is describe what you're feeling and put it in context. And I try to have that frame of mind. If something doesn't interest me, I'm not going to shit on it per se, but I'll just say this isn't for me, but it might be for other people. I'm not trying to discredit that either. So it's about striking that right balance, I think, because people are clicking the review and reading it because they're looking for the YouTube hit, and if I can help them, place the sketch in context or give a little, suggestion about why I think it doesn't work or why I think it does work. I do try to do that, but I don't want to, hammer home any points and be too disagreeable either, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. Dennis, how do you feel like, with regards to what Andy's saying versus how you recap your reviews?
I guess I'm more comfortable being disagreeable. I don't know. The AV Club, again, they've always been, I've been a fan, as long as they've been around. And I've always admired their willingness to engage with pop culture in as full a way as possible. And for me and Saturday Night Live and something like that has been a major part of my life and a formative influence on not just my sense of humor, such as it is, but just me as a person. Putting each week's show into a context that draws on 4+ decades of, watching and evaluating and thinking and having your favorites and ranking your cast members and it's, I regard it as a tremendous responsibility. As goofy as that sounds for somebody writing about TV, SNL has meant something to me, and it's meant a lot more to a lot of people. And as a cultural entity, for it to be as relevant as it is, and we can argue about how relevant it is, but as relevant as it is to the discourse about comedy and about politics and about television and about representation and everything that goes into producing the show, I regard it as a great responsibility, which can get pretty nerve-wracking at times. Like I said, I'm writing. I watch the show. I tend to take notes during the show, give myself a snack break or take a walk, and then just get to work and write until about 6 a.m, trying to essentially write an essay that also that pays appropriate, specific attention to each individual sketch performance. It's I don't know. Like I said, it's a huge undertaking each week, and people seem to like it. I guess they keep paying me, so I suppose it's going okay.
For sure. I think that for me, when I used to watch the show just as a regular, I wasn't in the podcast game yet, and I was just a regular watcher of Saturday Night Live. I would always, in addition to reading recaps, listen to some of the original Saturday Night Live podcasts that were around. And I remember that was, there was one that, started up at least like 10 or 12 years ago. And one of the hosts was Rich Tackenberg, who now podcasts with us. And I remember listening to Rich and Rob Cesternino recap Saturday Night Live. And I said to myself, I was like, like I could do that. I really felt like I was like, I could talk about the show. I feel comfortable, being on camera in front of a microphone, and I think I could share my opinions. But my concern was, hey, if I talk about the show and that is, what I'm doing, whether it's as a job or a hobby, maybe I won't enjoy the show as much anymore. I was always worried about like flying too close to the sun. A year and a half into this thing, so far so good, but there are definitely moments where I'm a little bit burnt out from all the shows we're producing, or all the, or am I going to be able to come up with an interesting spin on what the show is this week? And I do wonder if it fulfills the same things, that I was getting out of the show when I was just a casual watcher. So I'm curious from both of you, if you've had that experience at all throughout your time evaluating the show. Does it take away from your enjoyment of it all? And Dennis, I guess I'll start with you.
I don't think so. I mean, that's the cliche is that when never make something you love into your job, because those are at odds, work and play, but SNL, uniquely for all its up and downs, was always a show that invited engagement on a very, very personal level for me. And even if, when I was a teenager, watching Eddie Murphy and I wasn't necessarily, jotting down, essays and thoughts about the significance and all that, but I was engaged in a way that kind of segued really easily into writing about it. I was always kind of writing about it in my head, I guess.
Okay. Andy, what about you? Has, writing about the show changed your experience with it at all?
I mean, the word burnout is not the wrong word to use. I mean, again, I keep going back to the sporting analogy. If you're a fan of baseball, you watch 162 games a year. It can deepen your appreciation, even if the team is awful. And SNL, it's such a unique show in television and streaming and pop culture that it kind of stands alone, really. So, being part of that history in some small way, as Dennis pointed out in his intro, show that's been going strong for 47 years and being able to comment and reflect on that. Especially live, it's a live show. So I do kind of enjoy the thrill, I guess, of being able to comment live, because I feel like there's a weird sort of parallel there. And the show is almost as much as it's made a stamp on American culture and society, it is also very fleeting at times. So I think if there is kind of a burnout or an adjustment of my appreciation of the show, it does come from the fact that you're watching sketches that, as soon as you blink and they're over, you've totally forgot about them, as has everyone, including the people who wrote and performed in them. Whereas, my relationship to the show really began, with Wayne's World. I've said this on this podcast so many times, but, you had that hour-long Comedy Central version that kind of distilled down almost like a best of the episode, right? And they put in the dress rehearsal and would kind of flavor the sweeten the laugh track a little bit there. But this, watching it live week to week, it's not like that at all. So that does taking some use, because it's none of it's classic, nor is it intended to be, I guess is my point. So you don't see Chippendales, you don't see, Matt Foley every week, and you might see one or two a season, frankly,
Definitely. I am curious, I want to ask both of you, were there any episodes in particular, and Dennis, I guess going all the way back to 2014, I'm curious, was there an episode or two where you had some challenges writing about that particular episode? You're like, oh wow, SNL did something and I am just stumped tonight.
Yeah, I there are times, like Andy said, I mean, there are some weeks where the problem isn't necessarily that the show really went for it and did some stuff that is hard to encapsulate. It might be that the show went by and you're like, they gave me nothing.
Disposable. Yeah.
Disposable.
Yeah.
That can be hard. The hardest, other than that, the only time I kind of broke format was with the Donald Trump episode. That was hard.
How did you break format? What, for those who didn't get to read that back in the day?
I usually break it into kind of funny categories and say, we get the best and the worst sketch, do a list of those and a report on, weekend update and report on the recurring sketches, if any, that week, and rank like who was most valuable, not ready for primetime player that week. And this one just turned, I didn't feel right doing it. It just didn't fit. And this was 2015, 16 and 2015. And it was very controversial, and I had very, very strong feelings, and a lot of people were going to have very, very strong feelings about anything I wrote. That one was hard, especially knowing that I'm working without a net, and he knows, I mean, you're in the CMS and you're writing it and you're thinking, when I hit send, this is going to be a thing. And that was probably my hardest one.
Okay. Andy, was there an episode for you that you found particularly difficult to write about?
Well, just piggybacking off of Dennis's point, which I think is fitting, because I feel like I piggyback him in more ways than one. All the Trump cold opens, the first season or two that I did this, were just total crap, and how do you put lipstick on a pig, like just awful writing, nothing redeemable about them. And then my second point, 1B, going off of the Trump answer, which I think is correct. Elon Musk was a little controversial. That was challenging. Kim Kardashian, it wasn't hashtag, it wasn't for me, like hashtag wink, wasn't for me. It sucked. Casey Killingsworth in the chat is pointing out, John, the Paul Rudd episode, which does also resonate. I mean, the at-homes in the Paul Rudd were so weird because of the nature of COVID and whatnot, that for me, I don't know about Dennis, you could kind of put them in sort of that strange box and sort of riff off that. But, the Paul Rudd episode wasn't an episode really, right? So there wasn't too much to recap. It was 50%, best of clips. But anyway, those are a few examples.
Okay. What about best episodes that you ever talked about? Was there a favorite, either one cast member just did something that really stood out to you and you were like, oh, I can't wait to write about this, or a particular episode that you loved, Dennis?
Oh boy. I should have prepared for this.
I'm glad that Dennis is going first, by the way.
Okay, I can go with Andy if you want.
Yeah. I'll pick one from this year, and not
Sure.
because it's the greatest thing I've ever seen, but because it's kind of representative of the kind of joy that I can get still from the show. Is when you watch somebody new to the show break out in a big way and do something that both you think is gonna go viral and be talked about, but also is just something that you really think is outstanding. And that was Aristotle Atari, when he did he did Angelo, and it's a sketch. I think it's a sketch that he had been doing on stage. So who knows, how much more stuff he's got in the trunk. But it was so original and so just inhabited that it just made me sit up. I love when a new cast member breaks something and you think, oh yeah, that guy could make it. He could be something. that one recently, from the recent stuff, I love discovering stuff like that. I was really, really impressed. And I was really, just as a fan, I was just reminded again why the show can be so uniquely fun to watch.
Definitely.
C'est for me?
Yeah, the chat was asking for it, so had to give it to them. But yeah, that's true. I think that I totally agree, because I find as a podcaster, talking about the new blood that comes on the show is an endless pool of content to talk about, because the opportunities are endless, right? I mean, we don't know, if this is gonna, fail tremendously, or if this is going to go really well and this is going to be potentially the star. Like, I sometimes think to myself, I'm like, okay, maybe this is crazy, but like, maybe not, right? Because SNL's created megastars, and I think like, well, okay, I'm watching James Austin Johnson at the start of the year, right? JJ comes on and he has the most dominant premiere of somebody in 20 years, and I think to myself, I'm like, is every single kid from the next generation or my future kids, are they going to not be able to, not stop talking about James Austin Johnson? And I start thinking about this, and I'm like, you're there to watch the kid become the man. And I think that's really, really cool, especially when you're talking about in Aristotle's case, because with Aristotle, with Sarah, with, some of the younger castmates, Andrew, Chloe, Ego, like all these younger people on the cast, you never know where they're going to go. So I agree, Dennis. I think that's some of the most fun stuff to talk about and write about in your case. Andy, what about you? Anything in particular, like any episode or thing that you've written about that you really, really enjoyed?
I really enjoyed Ed Murphy's return, particularly because I had 3 former cast members commenting on the episode, Gary Kroger and Matthew Lawrence. So that, for obvious reasons, was fun. And I love when the show, is aware of its own history, but not in a cumbersome way. I love like the Kieran Culkin moment where he's talking about, being on the show back in 1991, or even like smaller things that only like an SNL nerd would appreciate, like, Eugene Levy's cameo when his son came to host, just given the fact that Eugene, I think he had like a canceled episode during one of the strikes in the early 80s. So really being able to kind of flex that SNL dork muscle, so to speak, and be able to connect the dots to a totally different era of the show, because that's one of the it's a blessing and a curse, but I think that's one of the things that's most pleasurable about SNL, is that you can make an easy reference or an easy callback to something that happened 30 years ago, and people, for either implicitly or not, will understand what you're talking about.
Definitely. Okay, so Dennis, let me ask you this. Give me one episode or one moment in the history of the show that you wish you would have been around to write the recap for.
I'm uniquely unqualified to write about it, so even if I were of age, I would have been unqualified. But the word association sketch with Chevy and Richard Pryor, that was a game changer. That was, I don't know, it was for the time something. It was what you can do on what Saturday Night Live can do that no other show can do, and talking about race and knocking the comedy out of the park at the same time, and having Pryor on, and whether or not there seems to be some debate still about whether or not he was on a delay because they couldn't trust him to say something controversial, or at least to cuss or something. I would love to have sunk my teeth into that, but again, I don't know if I'm the right guy to have done it.
Yeah, no, but that, I mean, obviously one of the most like historic moments in the history of SNL, and just a major part of season 1. So really fascinating moment that you did pick. Andy, what about you? Is there like an episode or moments that you're like, oh, I really wish I was writing for EW during when that happened?
Well, I don't know if I wish this per se, but I would love to hop in the DeLorean and see what the recappers would have said, a few hours after Sinead O'Connor, or some of these like really controversial moments. What would Twitter have done if Sinead O'Connor ripped up a picture of the Pope like live on television? Andrew Dice Clay stands out. Maybe Martin Lawrence's monologue. There's some of these like really like, button pushing moments in the show's history, that predates the internet, the glorious internet.
Yeah. I think for me, if I had to pick any moment that I'm like, oh, I wish I could have done the hot take show that night, I think it's like, potentially the Tom Hanks Five Timers Club, because like
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm a sucker for meta, right? Like I love it when the show eats its own tail. So like
Yeah.
I love how, this thing, it's like, okay, this never existed. Nobody ever talked about it. Nobody ever thought about somebody getting a jacket or a hat when, you hosted for 5 times, but all of a sudden, Elliot Gould is back on the show. And it's like, just these amazing moments. And, the fact that Lauren came back, and then, you started having these new stars, being developed at the show between, Dana and Phil, and then all of a sudden, there's hosts that are hosting every single year between, Tom Hanks and Alec Baldwin. And it was just like, I would have loved to have been at that moment just to see what it's like when all these people come back. And, that was what was really tough for me with the Paul Rudd episode, because I was looking forward to seeing what would have happened there, obviously. So I think for me, if I'm thinking about moments that I wish I was there for, it's, these special moments where something happens at the show that can only happen at the show. And I think you see that probably on, if I was to do the hot take show for the 25th anniversary or 40th anniversary or 15th anniversary, I think those are nights I wish that I was around for those.
Wait, can I make one more addition?
Of course. Yeah, for sure.
How about Eddie Murphy's first update monologue, where he's talking about, I think, basketball players, right? It wasn't was it a Muhammad sketch? I forgot. But anyway, just to see him kind of like live and be like, oh, who is this guy? I think he might be funny. He might be good.
Yeah, and just to jump in, speaking of that era, I think it would have been especially challenging to be reviewing the show after Lauren left the first time, and it was the Gene Jamanian year, just to review that year and see if you could make sense of it. I think as a writer, that would be really challenging.
Right.
For sure.
Like, oh, Denny Dillon's got some good stuff there. Like
Oh,
trying
good.
to like make lemonade out of lemons.
You would do that, Andy. But I do wonder, like, there must have been reviewers that were like in the, the New York Post or some New York Daily News. There must have been people who were reviewing Saturday Night Live at the time. Do you guys like
Tom Shales didn't he?
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Shales was doing it. I'm trying to think. Yeah, there's TV critics. Yeah, for the big newspapers in the old days.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And for sure. And I do wonder how, if you were to compare, their reviews of the show to some of your reviews of the show, I do wonder, how that stuff's, changed throughout the generations in terms of, what they can evaluate and stuff like that. So let's talk about, we have a lot of young listeners who, just have really watched the show, in this era, and have, been listening to podcasts because, podcasts, it's easy, right? They're on their way to school or whatever, and they want to, they don't read as much maybe. And I would love to, have the two of you, tell the listeners, what you can get out of, reading a recap that you can't necessarily get out of listening to a podcast. Because I actually think there's a lot of benefits, to both listening to podcasts and to reading recaps. So Dennis, start with you.
Podcasting's come a long way. It's I especially during the pandemic, I've come to rely on them and to see, like, to really embrace like how the breadth and depth of the podcasting world. So I don't know that the distance between the two is as great as it maybe used to be. I think I'm better in print, as everyone's probably finding out. But I think I'm better. I think I'm better with a little time to reflect on and get my thoughts in order. But also podcasting, it's a very, I don't know, the live give and take with people who are very enthusiastic about a single topic is kind of irreplaceable too. So, I guess. For writing, just that, because I'm old, the concept of someone being paid to write something that shows up in print or on a screen, it has a certain unearned authority to it. People think, well, yeah, that it must have more legitimacy or something like that. But I don't know. I think what you're doing and what the best podcasts do is just as valuable as what I do and what Andy does.
For sure. And I agree with the legitimacy of critics and stuff. I think obviously, a lot of people can start podcasts. It's not so easy to be given the role of writing for a major publication about Saturday Night Live each week. So there's definitely, an authoritative level that you two can write on, unlike somebody else. But, Andy, I would love to go to you. I mean, tell the listeners, what the benefit is about reading the recaps on a weekly basis compared to just listening to podcasts and having, anybody talk about the show.
Well, I mean, I kind of echoing Dennis again. I think that they're complementary.
Okay.
It's a little bit of apples and oranges. I mean, if I had to make an argument, it's you have the benefit of reading. The relationship to reading is inherently different from listening. I think it triggers your brain a little bit different and engages you in a slightly different way. Although that works both ways too, because you're listening to a conversation as these mighty people are at the moment. But for like Entertainment Weekly, if you just want the benefit of cutting through the crap and cutting through a conversation that you're not interested in, you have the written word, you can just go where your eyes want it to. If you want to find update, there it is. If you want to see what Dennis Perkins said about the monologue, you can just find it in the article very quickly and get it and get out. So, I don't think that it's better or worse type situation. I think it's a different experience, obviously.
For sure.
But read my recaps though, if you had a choice.
Andy, I am curious. Do you ever read the comments or the reviews of your recaps?
I read every comment. I don't play that game. I like the hate, honestly. Like when people are saying shit, like I read it. I'll comment sometimes, not all the time, but I'll engage. I don't mind it, honestly. But Dennis is more seasoned than I am, so he might have a more mature perspective.
Oh no. Yeah. No, I think the opposite. I think not to get too personal, but I think I've been in therapy and over the past decade that I've been at work, and I think when I first started writing there, I would read every comment sort of in a desperate search to reaffirm all of my worst fears, about myself and my writing, and stuff that was really, really bad, or really I don't know, it really got to me, to the extent that I don't really read them anymore. I'm sorry to say to all of my AV Club readers, I will take a quick scan, but it's sort of like I used to say I'll read it until I get to the first really mean and unreasonable one, but I don't know. I don't feel like I can play that kind of Russian roulette anymore.
Well, it also might be a question of the quality of the chat. Sometimes I think that the comment section at Entertainment Weekly is like 80% like bots or maybe people who live in the Ukraine. Like I'll read the comments. I'm like,
oh no,
you mean Russia?
Heyo. We're live here,
topical.
People. It's February 21st.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll read some of them. I'm like, that feels automated, like weirdly not human. So I mostly read it because I want people to say it was great to hear from Siobhan Fallon or Jeff Richards or Andy, you made a great point about this, but man, you were really off the mark on Sarah Sherman's update appearance. Because again, I'm writing these. I'm half delirious, when I'm writing these things. So to read the comment section, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, you know what? You're on to something. That sentence was terrible. But again, it's different from what Dennis does.
I will say, that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Dennis. Yeah, please.
Well, just the AV Club is not notorious. That sounds bad. Is famous for having very engaged and very articulate commenters, in addition to the usual internet crop of commenters.
Yeah,
and I know there's a lot of
the any cool talkbackers.
There was a lot of controversy. The former community, before there was a switchover and it switched from Discus to another commenting format, and people were very much up in arms about that because that became so a part of people's experience of the site and of the writing on the site and my reviews that it felt like a duty to engage in it. I just felt after a certain point, for my own well-being it wasn't a good idea to keep doing. And again, I'm
Yes.
really sorry, everybody. I'm sure you're
It's not
really
a good
putting a lot of
mental
effort
health
into it.
tip, that's for sure. I just happen to thrive off it a little bit. So keep it
For
coming,
sure.
everyone.
And I would say that is probably one of the main differences between podcasting and writing the reviews is that I need to get the feedback, because otherwise I'm just a man who's talking to myself in a microphone, right?
Don't say that, John. Don't ever say that.
Well, I'm just saying. What I'm saying is that like this is what I do, and I know, and it's so funny because like I listen to, like, I'm a podcast addict. I listen to a ton of podcasts, and I often hear podcasters say like, let me know what you think of the show and comment, and I love to get the feedback and stuff like that. And you go through this process every single week of listening to their shows, and you're just enjoying them, and you don't think that you want to say something to them. But I always like to encourage our listeners to to like let us know what you think and ways to improve, because again, like that's the most fulfilling experience. And I honestly say that like last season we did the hot take shows 3 or 4 times, and I was like, wow, that was really fun and cool. And like, I don't know if I could commit to every Saturday night going live at 1 a.m. But having sometimes hundreds of people in the chat to talk about a show on a given night, and like letting me into your living rooms, or in a completely platonic way into your bedrooms late at night is a great feeling, because it's really just nice to know that you guys care about the work that we're doing. So I think there's definitely some similarities, as well as some differences between the two ways that we go about recapping the show. Okay. I do want to ask, like I said, we have some, listeners who are bloggers themselves, who, either have their own websites where they write recaps of SNL, or they've contributed and, submitted and tried to get in the places that the two of you are. Can I ask, for some advice that you can give to some, young up and coming, writers who are super talented, but, obviously Dennis, as you've mentioned, the pool of people out there who want to write about anything is massive. So how can you kind of, make your way through that?
I feel ridiculously spoiled in the way that I got to where I am. Like I said, the AV Club was my second paid writing gig, and it was beyond my imagining that I would ever write there, or especially that I would write there so soon after kind of going pro, so to speak. So in that case, I think people will just be mad at me because I kind of got lucky. But the only advice I have is just write. And that sounds stupid and facile, but I started it was a blog. You can still find it. It's called Video Port Jones. It was for this video store, and it was overeducated and underemployed movie freaks who were just basically trying to keep our brains engaged and not turning to jelly. And so we would just write movie reviews, and we put them up online, and nobody would read them, or half, maybe a dozen people would read them, but you just kept doing it. I did that for 10 years for free as I was working. And it was part of how I got noticed. I'm not sure that that's a path that people are willing to take as advice, because it's certainly not remunerative. But honing your skill certainly is, and writing every day a blog is invaluable for that. I read a lot of my colleagues at the AV Club and other places. They in addition to their paid work, they also have blogs, or they'll have a Patreon where they do their own thing. And developing your own voice and finding your own niche, finding an audience that way, especially now with new media and all the rest of it, is a lot more valuable than it ever has been. So as lame as it sounds, keep plugging away.
For sure. Andy, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I'm a broken record. It's tough to follow Dennis there, because I 100% agree with everything he said there. You have to keep plugging away. You have to keep writing. Being mindful for developing your own voice, I think, is key. So it's not just the quantity argument. It's making sure that it's not just a perfunctory exercise. You're continuing to sort of reflect on yourself and what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are. I think, again, in this day and age, as Dennis is referencing, making sure that you have the ability to brand yourself and get your words out there when you're ready, I think is important too. Because I read a lot of the blogs that some of the SNL folk post in our group DM and everything, and they're just as good as anything that I could say, sometimes better, frankly. So I think it's just a testament that this is a democracy. No one has inherently a better point of view or a better way to analyze the show necessarily. We're all fans of the show and lovers of the show, and that should be an asset at the end of the day.
I agree. Dennis, Andy, I do want to do some season 47 talk, if the two of you don't mind. I'd love to get into, where we're at in the show. Before I do, just to wrap up our discussion on, what you guys are doing as recappers. I don't know how often you get an opportunity to talk about your jobs and what you do. So, Dennis, is there anything else you wanted to say about your time, recapping, at the AV Club or anything like that?
I'm going to miss it.
We all are.
I don't know how much people are up on the latest news website trends, but GeoMedia, who owns the AV Club, is forcing out all the Chicago staff. And I'm not part of the Chicago staff, but as a freelancer and somebody who respects the hell out of all of those people, my TV editor, Danette Chavez, is one of the finest editors and one of the finest people I've ever met, even though we've never met because I'm in Maine and she's in Chicago. I just couldn't. I'm leaving. I'm leaving at the end of this month in solidarity with the rest of the staff. I will say that my SNL reviews have been. I got a very nice offer to write somewhere else, and I don't know that we haven't finalized everything, so I don't know if I should put that person or that publication on the spot. But keep an eye on my Twitter, and I'll let you know where to find him.
Yeah. I look forward to it. And let me just say, on behalf of all of our listeners who constantly praise your reviews, Dennis, and really just comment to me about it, thank you for really just like all the effort. I mean, talking about staying up till 6 a.m. every single week, regardless of what where you end up writing that stuff, just really I'm very touched that you came on to talk with us about it, and for all the work you've done for almost a decade writing about Saturday Night Live. Just wonderful.
Well, that means a lot. Thank you.
My pleasure. Andy, anything else you want to say about, you writing for Entertainment Weekly, or anything else that we spoke about tonight?
No.
All right. Got it.
No.
All right. So let's end it on a nice note, praising Dennis as well. And let's do some season 47 talk. Okay. Let's talk about the show this season, because I'm sure the listeners, like I said, have read some of those reviews, and, let's, take stock of where we are in the season. Obviously, we're going to have some coverage coming up because we got some episodes coming up, and we just wrapped up the Olympics, and now we're hitting the home stretch. We have 9 weeks of SNL in the next 13 weeks. So it's going to be a lot of Saturday Night Live coming up, very similar to how we started the season. So Andy, I'll start with you on this one. Just tell me, what are you most looking forward to, or things you're going to look out for in the next, 9 episodes that that you're really excited about?
Well, I want them to continue to give the new cast members the opportunity to shine. I don't think that it's a secret that, I think that some of the veterans are oversaturating the show and might be a hindrance to letting some of the newer voices have their moment. In particular, I think that, James Austin Johnson has made his mark, as John, you said earlier, it was a historic first episode. I don't know that they've fully given him the ball like they would have Dana Carvey, 35 years ago. Not that, one precedent should be the standard by any means, but, you would think that someone with his skill and someone with his, established record already would be given more opportunity. Especially he's playing Joe Biden, for Christ's sake. So that's kind of some of the things that I'm looking forward to. I like this modern trend of having hosts who are able to give a monologue that kind of resembles like a stand-up set. I think that's been kind of a fun and funny modern quality. The ability to kind of comment on the news of the day in addition to update. Musical guests have been decent. Yeah. So I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah, I just wanted the show to be good at the end of the day. And
sure.
I always look forward to who the new hosts are. I always keep my finger on the pulse there.
Definitely. What about any storylines that you are on the watch for, Dennis, for the rest of season 47?
Yeah, I'm with Andy. I want to see this cast get some more time to breathe. I think the part of the reason is, as Andy said, there are some big dogs at the trough who are going to get a lot of airtime, and that's fine because they're brilliant and they're great. But also they're taking time off. Lauren is clearly bending over backwards to accommodate people who are becoming big stars in other areas, like Kate and Cecily and Adie, and and Keenan has got his own show. But also I'm looking forward to. I've been relatively happy with how Lauren seems to have cranked back on the celebrity guest star kind of the Valve.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah, yes, I guess that.
Thank you, global pandemic. Right?
Yeah, it's like we know Lauren has lots of really famous, really talented friends, but there's also a cast with 21 people in it right now, and there's just no way to service that many people. And very talented people are always underused on SNL. Some people slip through the cracks for all kinds of reasons, but in this case, it is very much a case of there's just not enough to go around. So I'm looking forward to seeing who's going to take some time off next, so that some other people can get some work.
For sure. I think for me, guys, I just felt like the start of season 47 was some of the best SNL we've had in 5 years. And I was just hyped up. Like, I don't know what was in the coffee over at 8H, but they were just having fresh ideas. These new cast members came in. We had, 9 or 10 new writers that came in, and they were just pumping out creative stuff. We saw some formatting changes. We welcomed in, Please Don't Destroy sketches, and we had new impressionists. And it was just, there was a feeling of freshness around the show that hasn't been there in years, in a way that I know it because I felt it. I mean, I came on these shows live and I'd see everybody was so excited about Saturday Night Live, and it wasn't that week. It wasn't like that every week last year. So it was very, very exciting. And I think that, like I said, the thread, fell apart somewhere along the way. And I'm not sure if it was at SNL's, fault completely. I do wonder about, Omicron affecting the Paul Rudd show, cast members who, they're very loyal to being in and out between Kate and, Cecily, obviously. And then, these long breaks between, the Christmas break and the Olympic break. I think it's been hard to keep that momentum. So what I'm hoping for is, okay, let's rip up the pages. Let's start fresh, and let's start exactly where we did at the start of the season. And I felt like we got a little bit of that in Willem Dafoe. We got a couple things that were like exciting nuggets. But what I'm hoping for is like, okay, we're bringing in a veteran this week in John Mulaney, obviously who's been through a lot. We have a couple exciting hosts that people have wanted to host for a long time, between Oscar Isaac and Zoe Kravitz coming in. So I feel like there's, a lot of good here, and I just want to get back to it. And if they don't, I'll come on here and I'll say they didn't do it. They had a great start and they just fell flat. But I think they have the potential to have a great run at the end of season 47. Dennis, with these next 3 shows coming up between John Mulaney, Oscar Isaac, and Zoe Kravitz, is there anything in particular in these 3 that you're looking for?
Well, Mulaney's going to be interesting, like you said. I mean, the fact that he's hosted as many times he has in such a short space of time, and coming from a place where he was just a writer on the show when he first kind of hosted. He was a stand-up. He's kind of broadened out more now in his kind of career path, but I'm interested to hear his monologue. I haven't been able to get tickets to see what his new stage show is like, but I'm really interested. Plus he's so good at it. He's so good. I mean, of the times he's hosted, the sketches might have been up and down here and there, but he just was born to be on that show. He's just so good at it. I can't wait. And Oscar Isaac is a brilliant actor who's also an inveterate kind of goof, and he can do all kinds of stuff. And I'm really excited to see what they do with him.
For sure. Andy, thoughts on John Mulaney coming in? He's joined the 5 Timers Club, and then we have a couple, first-time hosts coming in, a season full of full-time first-time hosts. So your thoughts on the next run of shows we're going to get?
Well, John, you and I recently had the pleasure of streaming one of Mulaney's past episodes, and
that is true. Yeah,
it just they were hitting it out of the park that episode. I really enjoyed doing that. But I mean, he's got this kind of emeritus thing going on, and now it's kind of this habit when he comes back, they do some sort of Broadway number. I hope that they just don't kind of lean on those crutches, particularly given the year he just had. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for a very interesting episode. And as Dennis said, he's been touring, so clearly he has something to say, and I'm sure a lot of that set will make it into the monologue. So I'm obviously going to be interested in seeing it. I don't love the hero worship of these guys. Now it's almost like, John, you were saying earlier, like the 5 Timers Club, it's almost like too much of a good thing or something. We've gotten a little too solipsistic with it. So,
what is? Expand on that.
Just the idea of the 5 Timers Club, it was cute the first couple times, but now I don't know that we always need a 5 Timers sketch. Or we don't always need it. Fair enough. But, so just the idea that Mulaney's coming
don't
in.
Don't have a birthday party next year, Andy. That's if you don't like celebrations.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, if nothing else, they can rely on their traditions. They don't have to be funny. You're right. But and then Oscar Isaac. I'm interested to see what he brings to the table too. He's a charismatic guy, and I enjoy a lot of his work. Zoe Kravitz. I have not seen the new Steven Soderbergh movie. I enjoyed her in, what was it, Rough Night? I think it was Rough Night, right? With Kate.
I think so.
So yeah. I mean, they'll be interesting guests for sure. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what they bring on the table.
For sure. I'm excited. Give me both of you one MVP for the last 9 episodes that you think will be pretty most valuable on the show, I'd say. Dennis, what about you?
I'm ready for the Chris Redd breakout. I just think he's, again, underused, but he's really got a presence. He's especially good in the filmed pieces. I think he's a tremendous actor. I think once he has a little more room, I think he could really cement himself as a major player. So I'll say Redd.
I love that pick. Andy, what about you?
Dismukes. My man Dismukes.
I think it's a great call. Yeah. For me, I mean, I don't know. I guess this guy's like, a little bit faded into the background a bit. But I was gonna say, give me James Austin Johnson. I would love to see. Start off super strong. I'd love to see a really great ending. I would love to see him, do more sketch work, maybe potentially be on Update. I think that he could be the spark that could light up what we will be looking forward to in, season 48 potentially, is like leading this young crop of great cast members.
I mean, yeah, there's absolutely a scenario where he's the anchor. I don't know with 20 or 21 cast members that will ever get there in reality. But you can certainly close your eyes and sense a version of the show, that we've seen, throughout the show's time, where he's at the center, like Harvey, like opening the show in the cold open. And then, he's busting out all sorts of different characters. He pops up on Update as well too. So yeah, I want to share your optimism there, John.
Yeah. If I'm not optimistic, what am I?
I know.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, Dennis, Andy, this has been a really, really fun conversation to talk about everything that the two of you are doing, and your wonderful contributions to the SNL community. I am so looking forward to reading your reviews for the next 9 episodes of SNL. For what's coming up here on the podcast, I'm going to bring up our schedule on screen for those who have not checked it out on social media. So tonight, obviously, we had a Journalist Roundtable. If you're watching this live and you haven't checked out the beginning, go back. We had some great stories from Dennis and Andy about their experience recapping SNL. On Thursday, we're back with Hollywood Dish. We have hosts Nicole and Rebecca, and special guest Sammy K will be joining Nicole and Rebecca to talk about what is happening in the world of pop culture. So let's say, you haven't been checking out, any of those shows, Entertainment Tonight or reading any of the gossip columns. There's a lot of news in pop culture that is SNL related.
Is that right?
Kanye, Pete Davidson.
But I'll have to Google that.
Yeah, exactly. If you've been living under a rock, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. So Nicole and Rebecca will explain all of it to you, so you are prepped in case it comes up on the weekend on SNL. And then we will be back here Saturday night after the John Mulaney and LCD Sound System episode. Join us at 10 a.m. for the Saturday Night Hot Take Show. We have a great panel to break down all of the sketches that you see that night, including potentially maybe a Five Timers Club sketch, even though Andy wouldn't love it. So there's could be a lot of fun. So join us for that. Of course, we have our roundtable and patron feedback shows next week. If you'd like to become a patron of the SNL Network, patreon.com/the SNL Network, you can come and podcast with us on a patron feedback show. Or we have our, watch parties that we had last week and this week of the John Mulaney previous hosting episodes that were a lot of fun that Andy referenced. So we're going to be watching John Mulaney 3 and John Mulaney 4 this week in our patron Facebook group. Okay. Dennis, thank you so much. Like I said, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you on the show. Please tell the listeners where they can, check out everything that you are doing.
Oh, it's been an honor for me too. This is delightful, and you do such a great job. Thank you. And Andy, it's really great to get to meet you.
Likewise.
I don't know. My stuff will always be up at the AV Club, assuming Geo Media doesn't do anything even stupider. So you can always check it out there. I did a lot of stuff over 10 years that I'm very, very proud of, and I'm glad it exists. Other than that, keep looking. If you're interested, check my Twitter. I'll be, I'm freelancing for real now, and so I'll be hyping up anything I get paid to do. So.
100%. And I look forward to having you back on the show again one day, Dennis, to talk about Saturday Night Live. So love that. Andy, where can listeners reach out to you and tell them everything you've been up to?
Right here on the SNL and Review Twitter account, Also, in addition to Entertainment Weekly, as I mentioned earlier, I'm fortunate to be able to contribute to the Vulture chat room segments when I do a Q&A with a former cast member. I just did Paul Schaefer for the 40th anniversary of David Letterman coming out. That was an absolute blast to talk to him, not just about Letterman, but all his different experiences throughout his career. So I really, really recommend that the people check that out. Just trying to, capture history and also take a look at the archives. I've talked to, Siobhan Fallon Hogan, take a look at that conversation. She's absolutely wonderful. You can get stories about, her time on the show in addition to what she's up to now as well, too. So just wanted to shout out Siobhan Fallon and that conversation in particular.
100%. Well, a great interview that you did with Siobhan and on all the
Thank you,
articles
John.
that you posted today on President's Day. I really enjoyed getting to check those out again. Chat, I just want to thank you for joining us live, and thank you for all the kind comments. It's, hard to do the show and also comment back to all of you, but I just want to let you know I appreciate everybody. I do read the comments, so I appreciate all the kind words over there. To follow us, you can find us at the SNL Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Please make sure to click that subscribe button on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen to the show. It really helps people find the show and helps us continue to grow as we continue to, talk about Saturday Night Live, our favorite show. So for Dennis Perkins, Andy Hoagland, and myself, Jon Schneider, I appreciate you joining us. And I'm so thrilled that Saturday Night Live is coming back this week. We'll see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.